what a day we had. I didn't begrudge spending an extra day in Anchorage at all. I mean, we had a ball. Where can you see scenery like that? I mean, we just don't have an opportunity. So I'm glad that the weather came in and the hunters got stacked up. We saw some country that I really would have missed, but Alaska is gorgeous. I mean, compared to Quebec, which tends to be drizzly and a lot of expansive tundra, Alaska is breathtaking. Now I'm going to run the next 4 segments we did on television where I got a very respectable bull caribou. So watch these. I think you'll enjoy it, and then we'll come back and talk about some tips of things that maybe you should take for caribou hunting. The weather had been bad for the past week in southern Alaska. Planes were stacked up waiting to take caribou hunters into the backcountry. Our plane would leave tomorrow morning, so John Ford and I rented a car and spent the afternoon driving down the Kenai Peninsula, taking in the sights. Late August is the time the silver salmon move in for their spawning runs, attracting anglers who cast from shore, often catching their limits. Now watch the salmon jump in the background. Some anglers use bait, but many cast or troll spoons. Look at this, 2 double hooks instead of 1 treble are a popular Alaskan combination. Can you imagine a more beautiful setting than this for an afternoon of fishing? All kinds of boats troll the bay at Seward. Private boats, charter boats, big ones, small ones. But I'm not sure that the trollers were having any better luck than the shore fishermen. It seemed that everybody was hooking salmon. You know, you often think of the Caribbean when you think of a cruise ship, but southern Alaska caters to cruise ships in the summer. An occasional belch of smoke is just about the only pollution you see in this country, except, of course, that travesty down the coast. The fragile beauty of Seward, nestled amongst the mountains on a saltwater bay, was untouched by that oil spill, and I have to say Seward at sundown was the most beautiful setting for a community that I've ever seen. We drove along Prince William Sound south of Anchorage as the tide was going out. Now, it just doesn't slide out to the sea. It's a mad rush of water, bucking the wind. At times, the water level drops 30 feet in a matter of hours. Dangerous for swimming and even boating. You can honestly watch the tide go out and come in. It rises and falls so quickly. But the water itself isn't the only hazard. When John and I crossed a ditch across a beach, we found that the sand that was freshly exposed from the ebbing tide was a hazard as well. Standing in one spot, your footing gives way. The wet sand was like quicksand. I really didn't want to see how far I'd sink, so we didn't play with Mother Nature on this one. We saw the delicate beauty of Alaska on the ground, a stark contrast to what we saw from the air. Jagged volcanic peaks interspersed with valleys of open water, floating chunks of ice that broke off the feet of glaciers were sights that made us wonder how or if anyone had ever set foot up here before. Only description we could come up with is awesome, totally awesome. The western slopes of the mountain range mellowed out with vegetation, clouds, and rain, which occurred about every other day in August. Our outfitter, Gary Pogany, flew us in one of his several planes to Osprey Mountain Lodge, west of Anchorage. Now this is our base camp. Most of the hunters will be flown to individual tents in the surrounding area for several days at a time. Flying, by the way, is a necessary part of life in Alaska. Most everyone, it seems, has a pilot's license. It's the most efficient and oftentimes the only way to get around. Gary's a Michigan native, by the way, transplanting his family to Anchorage a few years ago. 2/3 of all Alaskans weren't born there. With the mud caused by the August rains, Gary keeps his camp clean and dry with the walkways he's built to connect the main lodge with the tents. These tents are where hunters stay while they're at the base camp. This is the main lodge. Wow, where the guides and the pilots and the chef stays. How do you build a lodge like this in a remote mountain valley? We'll show you in a minute. But this lodge is a dream house for most sportsmen. It's where the meals are prepared and where hunters lounge in comfort. Last summer, Gary added indoor plumbing, a shower, and a sauna. What a view from the living room. For 2 days, a grizzly bear and her 2 cubs were feeding on the remains of a butchered caribou. They could be watched through these windows. This bulldozer was flown to a landing strip 20 miles away one summer. It took Gary 3 winters to drive it the 20 miles to this location over the mountains and through the tundra. With the dozer, the paths are kept graded, and most importantly, the landing strip is constantly groomed to keep it safe for the larger planes. Osprey Mountain Lodge, if you're looking at a map of Alaska, is 175 miles west of Anchorage and just east of Stony River. It's in a small valley surrounded by mountains and caribou. But now back to the question on building the lodge. It was all done with the help of a portable sawmill that was also flown in. All the logs came from trees in the area, dragged to camp with the bulldozer, and fashioned into planks and 2x4s on the spot. Quite an undertaking, isn't it? Don't quit your job and move to Alaska with visions of getting rich by opening a hunting camp unless you're a pilot, you have a couple planes, you can build lodges from scratch, and you don't mind risking your money and at times your life to make your dream come true. That's how it's done, the pioneer spirit. An hour after we arrived, John took the camera for a walk around camp with Bobby Knope of In Season Adventures and Bob's nephew Mark on his first Alaskan caribou hunt. Bobby books hunting and fishing trips all over the world, and he knows where to look for the big ones. This isn't a big one, it's a small bull caribou, but the first one spotted is always exciting. Look at that bouncing gait. That's how they trot over the tundra. Here he turns and looks towards us. Their eyesight isn't all that good if you hold still, and they often can't resist coming closer to see if, well, you're maybe another caribou. Mark's not going to shoot. He's just using his rifle scope to get a better look. Now, we're going to see lots of caribou in the days ahead. John and I will spend the next few days in the mountains. The Piper Cub dropped us off on a mountaintop, and that's where we'll be next week. I hope you'll join us.